Shalom Aleichem. Yesterday in Mishnah Yomi, we started the 9th chapter of Gittin. Now we're in Mishnah Beit. Harei at muteret lechol adam. The husband tells the wife at the time of giving the get, "Behold, you are able to marry anyone, ela, except le'aba, my father, levicha, or your father, le'achi, my brother, lechicha, or your brother, le'eved, le'nochri, a servant or a non-Jew, or for someone you can't have kedushin with," which would include, of course, her son, her grandson. Kosher, this is a valid get. Now, yesterday we said if the husband leaves over, you can marry anyone except Ploni. That's not a valid get. But here, the Plonis that he's forbidding, she can't marry them anyway. So the husband giving this condition, she can't marry her own father or his father, she was never allowed to marry those people anyway. So this does not impact her marriage pool, and it doesn't have any deleterious effects on the get, and the get is perfectly valid, and she's perfectly divorced, and she still can't marry those guys. Now, the Mishnah contrasts this with some similar arayot that are less severe, and we've discussed these a bit in Yevamot. What if it says, Harei at muter lekol adam, you're allowed to marry anyone, so far so good, ele almana lekohen gadol, a widow to marry the Kohen Gadol. So she was a widow once, and then she married this guy, and now he's divorcing her, and he says, you can't go marry the Kohen Gadol because you're an almana. Or Gerusha Chalutza, she had been divorced previously, or had received Chalitza instead of Yibum, LeKohen Hedyot, and therefore you can't marry a regular Kohen. Or Mamzeret Natina Yisrael, or an illegitimate child, or a Natin. Remember, those are the Givonim, are also called Natinim, and we talked about that in Yevamot, that they can't marry into the regular Jewish people. The Yisrael to a regular Jewish person, or Bat Yisrael, the daughter of a Jewess, Lamamzer Natin, to a male illegitimate child, or Givoni Natin. Ulechol me, and really to any man, sheyesh law olav kedushin, where there is kedushin, afilo be'avera, but it's kedushin in sin, puzzle. This divorce is invalid, the get is not valid. Now here, she's not allowed to marry any of these men, Almana LeKohen Gadol, Gerusha LeKohen Hedyot, etc. They can't get married, but technically, if they do a kedushin, it's a valid binding kedushin. Now, our sages don't want that marriage to continue, so we'll penalize the man. We're not going to give him an aliyah in shul. There's going to be penalties. It's not good. We want this marriage in sin to end, but they are technically married. Now, in the Torah, they break down these restrictions are Isser Lav. This is the Torah says, don't do this. However, if they do this marriage, it is a binding marriage. Whereas previous cases, the relatives, the fathers and children, that's an Isser Mitra, Isser Karet. So that can't even be, it doesn't even get off the ground. There's no such thing as a marriage in those categories. But here, since there is such thing as a marriage of Almana LeKohen Gadol, even though we don't want it to happen, we want them to get divorced as soon as possible. They're living in sin, but they are living together as man and wife. So since the get restricts the woman from her potential marriage pool, even a marriage in Aveira, that get is not valid. And as we mentioned yesterday, the husband would have to give her the get again without condition. If the condition was written in the get, you got to start over from scratch with a new get. Let's go into Mishnah Gimel. Gufo shel get, the body of a get, the essential terms of the get. Harei at muter lekol adam are the words, behold, you are permitted hereby to marry any man. And of course, to marry a man, she's allowed to marry. Rabbi Yehuda says you should add on v'dain di'ahave lichi minoi sefer teruchin. And this, meaning this paperwork, that shall be for you from me a document of divorce, a gerit shavukin, a letter of abandonment, v'get piturin, and a get of being pater, of being released from our marriage. Limchach lechit nosva lechol gavar detitz bian, that you can now go marry any man you want. So he uses a more specific language that makes it clear that this particular piece of paper is what's allowing her to be muteret lekol adam, to marry whoever she wishes. The Mishnah brings a related concept. Gufo shall get shichror, the main wording, the body, the main part of a get of emancipation. An emancipation proclamation is harei at bat chorin. Of course, ben chorin if it's a man, bat chorin if it's a female servant, harei at la'atzmech. Or it can say, behold, you are to yourself. So it says you are free, or you are, basically, you're on your own. You're no longer required to serve this family. So any sort of paperwork that's an emancipation proclamation for an Eved Kanani, a Shifcha Kananit, without those words, they need to go back and use those words. Yeshar Kurachem, Sei gesund.